Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of the world's biggest stars and some of my favourite people, and we've got one for you today. Wayne Newton, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you, Alex?
I haven't spoken to you in nearly a decade, and here you are at Caesar's Palace still selling out. It's a remarkable life and career.
Well, the truth of the matter is it's surprising to me also. I think that the fact that we can still bring a smile to people's face and maybe a tear to their eye once in a while, but mostly take away their troubles for that period of time that we're on stage, really is the motivating force that keeps me going.
Here's what I don't understand. I've just sat through 2 hours of your show, and I'm confused. Are you a raconteur, are you a comedian, or are you a singer? You must decide.
I think you really don't have to decide, Alex, because as I reflect on show business, all right, and I remember seeing people like Judy Garland and Frank Sinatra in movies and on and on and on. They were great singers, they were great actors, they were great comedians. And so I think one can do it all as long as you really don't try to be the best in the world at one thing.
What I loved about tonight when I sat there in the Barge here at Caesar's Palace is when that drum roll starts and the lights go down. I was back in 1965 Vegas where we were in the presence of a legend, and it was exciting. It's so hard to create that in a room, and you do that nightly, don't you?
Well, I really don't think about it, and I think that maybe that's part of the reason that happens. Obviously, what we do is not unlike beauty. It's in the eyes of the beholder. And I realized a long time ago that a song is the only thing that I can think of that's not a double-edged sword, because a song takes each person in that audience to a different place. So you can't say, well, I'm going to do this song and the whole audience is going to stand up. It doesn't work that way. And so the trick, if you will, and trick is probably a poor choice of words, the object is a better choice of words, is to bring everyone together in a mood that they can still go anywhere they want to with the song, but they still realize that there's something that brings them all together at that moment.
They've granted me a 3-hour interview tonight. We haven't got time to talk about the people you have worked with, so let's talk about those you haven't, because it'd be quicker, wouldn't it, really?
I can't think of anyone I haven't worked with. And it's really fun for me because getting to know them and being subjected over my lifetime, from the time I was a little kid, and getting to know people like Elvis. Now, of course, everybody has their cell phones. They can take pictures. I realized how many people that I met that are great stars, that it didn't even occur to me, could I get a picture with them? And I think if I have one regret about yesterday, it's that one.
Wow. When we look back at your catalogue of work and music, one of the things that's interesting is the importance of England in your career, and throughout the show it keeps being referenced. One of the seminal points was the Palladium, and isn't it interesting, just today Madonna announced she's going to do a residency at the London Palladium. It's still a powerhouse theatre, and of course it was so important at the beginning of your career for an international global audience.
It truly was, and I remember walking backstage at the Palladium, and I remember looking at the wood, and I am an antique buff, and I said to my manager at the time, this door isn't a part of anything, do you think we could buy it? Simply because I wanted to be able to touch it, because I know who has played that theater and what it has meant to my career, and what so many of those artists have meant to that theater. And when I played a nightclub in London called the Talk of the Town, I had in the audience the Beatles before they came over here. I had Engelbert Humperdinck before he came over here. I had Tom Jones. So when you talk about Great Britain having its effect on me in my career, that's an understatement. Because meeting those people and then seeing what they became has been an absolute joy.
We're going to talk about Vegas a bit more in a moment, but I wonder what it's like watching clips of you some 50 years ago and seeing that young man with all that energy and all that talent and enthusiasm every night. It must be thrilling because it's like looking at your grandson, right?
Well, it's funny because time is not something that I've ever concentrated on. When people say, "Oh, how old are you?" I have to stop and think about it because I don't really care. I'm doing what I love doing. I've done what I've loved doing all my life. And then to look at those clips, I remember them like they're yesterday. So I really don't see that younger man out there doing his thing and hoping it works. I remember the setup to it. I remember how many times we had to do it to get that shot. And so time has never been something I've concentrated on.
I must ask you the question, how are you? Because you've just been off for a couple of weeks because you had surgery and it was all over the news. I mean, when Wayne leaves town, it's a big story here and people miss you. And now you're back. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm hurting a little bit, but the hurt is very interesting because it seems to go away on stage. And I think it's because of the energy and the love and the acceptance that the people out there bring into the room with them without even realizing it. And so it affects me so totally that the pain is kind of gone when I'm out there. When I move a certain way, it will affect me for a moment, but I then just kiss it off and go ahead. Because the look on people's face, and like tonight, the lady who was crying ringside, was so moving to me that it's tough not to get a tear in my own eye.
And of course, the meaning of these songs, you end with My Way, the most famous song in the world by Paul Anka, performed by Sinatra, who of course was your friend. I mean, it's amazing to me as I sit here looking at you to think what those eyes have seen. I mean, celebrities back in your day were megastars. It was a wonderful time to be part of show business, right?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, when I reflect on those years and those people, and many of them are clearing the way for when we get there, I realize what they meant to the world, and I realize what they mean to the world today. If there's anything that's lacking in the younger generation of talent that's coming up, it's discipline. And when you think of those people and that time and era, we all did 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week. I think my record was 35 weeks without a day off. And they would give the band a day off, but not the headliners.
Right.
And but when nobody tells you it's difficult, you don't turn it into something it's not.
Mel Brooks has a line in The Producers where he talks about the lounge, and you talk tonight about having to do 6 shows a day, 6 days a week. If you can do this, I guess this is a walk in the park, walking into Caesars headlining and doing a couple of hours.
It really is a walk in the park, and I do reflect on that very thing of thinking, oh my God, because I know how much energy it takes. And from the time you wake up in the morning or afternoon, in my case, the one thing on your mind is how much energy you're going to need in about 7 or 8 hours. And the last thing that audience wants to hear about is my problems. And if you'll notice, I didn't mention one thing about my back surgery or any of that, because they don't deserve it. They have worked hard, spent their hard-earned money to get away from politics, to get away from religious fights, to get away from fights with their mate, maybe even. And so they don't deserve to hear my problems because they've got their own. So the thing that I learned from my predecessors over the years is the last thing in the world you want to be to that audience is another problem.
You're so classy and you've lasted so long. You talk about not talking about your problems, but the warmth is extraordinary and the fact that they care about you. Interestingly, tonight there were more people in the room who hadn't seen you than had, but those who had love you. That must be a great feeling.
It's the most wonderful feeling, and a gentleman came up to me during the after thing where I take pictures with members of the audience, and he made a speech to me, literally, about what giving means and what being humble means, and all of those things that I learned from people like Jack Benny and Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and all of that. And it's something I still practice. It never leaves me. And for someone to recognize it and be able to put their finger on it was truly one of the greatest compliments I've ever been paid.
You've seen the evolution of this town. Las Vegas is still the entertainment capital of the world, and I believe it always will. It evolves and it changes. But there's still a place for people like you. Is it interesting for you to now walk around Las Vegas and see it as such a different place? I mean, it's day clubs and nightclubs. It's going to be a sports town. Is there still a place for a Wayne Newton who's 30, do you think?
I'm not sure that the time and place exists anymore for the kind of break and the kind of people that I had the pleasure of working with without even knowing it. When you talk about 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week, those places don't exist anymore. I think they figured out in the 1980s that I had done something like 55,000 shows at that point. And I think, how lucky can one man be to be able to have something that you love doing that there is still a demand for? And so when people talk to me about, well, have you thought about retiring? Be serious. Retire to what? You know, I love what I do, and I will do it just as long as I can bring that smile to people's face and mean something to their life.
My dearest friend, when he was asked would he ever retire at 91, said, you only retire to stop doing what you don't want to do what you do want to do, and I'm doing what I want to do, so no is the answer.
Now you say that again one time real fast, okay? That was, and it was so true. It was so eloquent that I wish I had said it.
You can have it. It's your gift.
Okay, it's a deal.
When we look at the show on stage and we see those Elvis numbers, you open with Viva Las Vegas, and then you tell the story of stealing his girlfriend. You must feel bad at this point.
Well, I didn't really steal his girlfriend because she didn't tell me she was going with Elvis, and somehow he found out. And she is a very close friend of mine to this day. But the one thing that both of us, Elvis and myself, because I was single at the time, and of course so was he, is that maybe there is another fish in the pond.
Right.
And luckily for me and him, there were.
Yeah, if there's not another fish when you're Wayne Newton or Elvis, I think none of us have got a chance, really. Just give us an insight and take us back to those days. I mean, walking in this building or that building, most of the casinos are not there that he played or you played. They've changed, evolved, and become different things. But walking in there, how did it feel? I mean, we see Rod Stewart and Celine on the front of this casino and Elton John and people like that. Is there any way of describing it, or was it just a job?
Well, to take you back, I would explain to you that in those years, the 60s, late 50s, 60s, and 70s, those people that you just mentioned and incredible talents would not play Las Vegas. They wouldn't even consider having a long-term engagement at one of the hotels. And so to walk into these places, I think the best way to explain it is not only did I work here all this time, but I lived here all this time. I didn't come in and do my 2 weeks or 3 weeks and go back to Palm Springs or LA or New York or wherever, right? So when I see what has happened, where those kind of talents are coming here for long-term engagements, and for the most part, they buy homes here too. I think that speaks volumes about what Las Vegas has become. After the terrible shooting that was here, that spoke volumes to what the people who live here are like. I went to the hospital to see a lot of the survivors, and in walking through the room that the families were in and waiting to find out how their family member was, there were local people who brought food, who brought blankets, I saw a guy loan his car keys to one of them whom he had never met, and said, instead of sitting here, take my car and drive around and take a look at our town. The town has evolved in so many ways, and with that kind of evolution, of course, there are things that you wish didn't happen that happens in any city. But the people who live here are a rare, rare breed of people. And I didn't want that particular terrible incident to actually give any kind of credence to what kind of people live here.
Help me with this. I was there that day, that night. How do you go on stage the following night? I wonder what goes through your head, because you can't deny what's happened, but at the same time, people have come to be entertained, and that's always the duplex with an entertainer, isn't it? You are there to entertain. The show must go on.
Well, I think that you just hit it on the head, because there were shows that canceled the entire week. I grew up with that attitude that the show must go on. I lost both of my parents on opening nights of Las Vegas. I was at different hotels both times, but they were opening nights. And I realized that I needed that myself. I needed to walk on stage and make sure that I overcame the grief and the hurt that I was feeling. And so I knew that the audience had that same feeling. And the worst thing that could happen is to walk out on stage and remind them of what just happened.
And the warmth you get, is there any way of describing the catharsis on a bad day when you have a poorly back or something horrible's happened, that sort of sea of warmth, that tsunami of grace that comes towards you, and they've paid to see you? And by the way, we should say you have one of the most expensive tickets in town, and people are delighted to pay it. There are people who perform here for free. You don't, and you don't have to. That's such a compliment to your talent and also your legacy.
Well, I thank you for that. I so many times reflect on when I came here, Mr. Sinatra, and the five, Frank, Dean, Sammy, Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, right? And they were appearing at the Sands collectively. And the cover with dinner was $5.95. So it shows you how the town has changed. And every night that I walk on stage, I realize that those people deserve the best that I can give them. And if I can't do that, then I should get off the stage.
I think the greatest compliment I can pay you is you looked like you wanted to be there. And that's so tough when you've done it a million times. And the sparkle in your eyes and the joy on your face when you walk out through that audience, I know it's reciprocal. They're happy to see you too. But that's such a rare thing. You do know that, don't you? That a lot of people in this town and others touring around the world, in London, wherever, Broadway, are bored to be there. You still have that energy and you still have that fight to entertain. That's miraculous.
Thank you very, very much. And I, of course, have come in contact with the kind of people you're talking about who want a curtain from their dressing room to the stage so no one can see them until they hit the stage. I don't get that. I don't understand it. But God bless them, and I wish them all the best. It's not my style, and it's not how I feel.
One other thing you said tonight that I just loved, and it's somehow I feel at the moment, is the world is so safe now and so scared of saying anything. And we're all so paranoid, and we've all got this problem and that problem. We're all too busy Instagramming our own face 72 times a week. Again, just to sit in a room and enjoy, this is a real pleasure that people have forgotten. We've got to go back to that. People need to understand what it is to laugh and not to sit there making comments and judging it. It's a joke. And you do so many of them tonight. Great jokes as well.
Thank you very, very much. And of course, my wife is an attorney, right? And she will say to me when we get home, you said something tonight that you could get in a lot of trouble over. And I said, what? And she mentioned it. And I said, look, if there is anything that people need, it's that. It's the fact that I don't have an axe to grind. Okay? The one thing I never talk about is politics. I never talk about religion. I never talk about those things that hit that special part of your heart that you become aggressive. And if I would give any credit to anything that I have done in my life, it was that people do understand when they watch my show. I don't have an axe to grind. I'm just there to bring them some happiness. And if I've said something offensive, I apologize. It was not intended to be that way.
I always say you take offense, you don't give offense.
That's right. That's right.
However, one question from the show, these little blue pills you speak of. Now, what are these? Should I Google them?
Well, the truth
please.
Luckily, I don't know, Alex. I only know what people tell me. And one thing that I also don't do is I don't go to Greenwald's.
Right. I don't think anybody does, do they? Congratulations on this show. It's part An Evening with Wayne Newton. It's got your wife who does this beautiful thing, and you don't reveal that till the end, which is really clever as well, that this beautiful chemistry between you is only revealed, and then the audience are, wow, some know, some don't. And then, of course, you sing and you comede and you bring back to the stage the legend of Las Vegas, and there's no better casino for you to be at than Caesars. You deserve your stage. Wayne Newton, thank you so much for your time.
God bless you, and thank you, and thank all of you.